We've talked about Chelsea a lot, haven't we? But today could be a pivotal day at Chelsea. They and Manchester United are in talks over two separate deals for Jadon Sancho and Raheem Sterling. We're going to start with Sterling. Now, this is what Enzo Maresca said about him last night. He said, Raheem is a fantastic person, a fantastic guy. He trains very well. The only thing is, every manager has different ideas. I said, in terms of the kind of winger, he is not one I like, but it doesn't mean nothing if he's not a good player. I think the history and numbers speak for Raheem. My advice, he knows exactly what he has to do. He says, he doesn't need my advice. It's not just Raheem, it's all the players who in this moment are training apart. In the moment the transfer window closes, they are not going to get minutes. I've already been clear with them and honest, and this was the only reason why. OK, so he has been pretty clear in that, Sam. Can you see why Sterling is not in his plans?
I think it's difficult when you look at the age profile that Chelsea have currently in terms of like their starting lineup. I think it's around the age of 22, 23. Sterling is obviously one of the most senior players. He's on one of the biggest wages as well. But when you look at how Chelsea are trying to move going forward, it's clear that they are looking to almost get rid of those players that aren't in the structure that they've been using in the last few transfer windows. He said there, you know, Sterling is a great player. We know what he's achieved. He's one of England's best players ever. When he finishes his time, whenever that is, he will go down as one of the best wingers we've seen in the Premier League. But at the same time, we do know that this is something that happens in football. I think Sterling will appreciate the fact that the manager's been honest with him, and he's seen the players that have come in. You know, Pedro Neto came in straight away, had an impact. João Felix as well, and I think these are the type of players that, you know, Enzo wants to go with moving forward. And like I said, we've seen Lukaku, you know, he's making a move away. Chilwell, he's linked with moves as well. And these are some of the top earners at Chelsea. So I think it's going to be something that Sterling appreciates in terms of the honesty, but he knows that he only has a few days now to really make a move.
A deal for Sterling would have to make financial sense for United, given the wages involved. Do you think it makes sense for them?
Well, we know these are two separate deals, Sancho, Sterling, but essentially, you know, Sancho's on the wage he's on at Manchester United and Sterling at Chelsea. Essentially, they would be swapping over, even though it's not a swap deal. So I imagine there's room in the budget for wages that Sterling's on. I think he'd probably have to take a little bit of a pay cut, you would imagine. But Manchester United obviously want Raheem Sterling. Erik ten Hag obviously wants Raheem Sterling. I think he's different to what Manchester United have in terms of their attacking options. I think people forget how good Raheem Sterling is. I think through his career, he's always faced flack, always faced criticism, but his numbers do speak for themselves, as Enzo Maresca says there. Just because Maresca doesn't fancy him and he doesn't fit into what Chelsea want to do, doesn't mean he wouldn't fit into Manchester United. I think there is a lot of traffic there. Manchester United do have a lot of attacking options, but I do genuinely believe that Sterling could offer them something different, brings in that little bit of experience as well. Manchester United have lost a couple of big earners in the summer, people whose contracts have expired, so perhaps the room is there to get a player of Sterling's stature in. And I just think if Manchester United, you know, weren't willing to take on a big wage, they wouldn't be pursuing him at the moment.
Well, in terms of Jadon Sancho, Juventus still pushing to sign the Manchester United forward. They're expected to propose a loan deal. That would incorporate a loan fee plus the percentage of the wages that they would be able to pay. Meanwhile, Chelsea, yeah, they're still in talks with Manchester United over the signing of Sancho. So, Dave, again, do you think wages could be an issue here?
Yes, absolutely. It was an issue for Manchester United in January before Jadon Sancho moved to Borussia Dortmund. I think United were quite aware of the financial constraints that Dortmund were under, but it was a move that Dortmund really wanted, and I think the player really wanted. And at the time, there was no real market for Jadon Sancho, so it made sense for both sides to come to an agreement on that. I think the deal that United actually struck in January for Sancho, wages-wise, was a fairly good deal for United. I think it was a large proportion of the wages, around about £3.5 million all in for that second half of the season loan. And then there were incentives on top of that, dependent on how Dortmund got on. And because they got to the Champions League final, Manchester United pretty much got all of those incentives paid to them. So I think financially, the loan worked for United last season. I think in an ideal world this summer, it would be a permanent move and they probably would have sold him 4 to 6 weeks ago. The fact that it's gone this late means that a loan deal is probably the most likely. And again, United's preference would be a loan with an obligation, but it might end up either being a loan with an option or a straight loan simply because time's running out. And also, Juventus haven't exactly had great finances over the last couple of years. They had missed a year in Europe because of their financial issues. They've already signed 2 wingers. They do, from what we hear, have the financial wriggle room in order to do the deal for Sancho on the wages that it would require and the financial contribution that it would require. But it's certainly something that we'll have to get over for United. United will have to get over in terms of getting that deal done.
You're like the finance guy, aren't you? A lot of loan chat there. Sam, obviously, like the money comes into it and who can pay the wages. But in terms of where he would fit better, do you think Juventus or Chelsea?
I think it's difficult to say because both teams have quite a few wide men at Juventus. Like they've said, they've got a few wide men, especially this season. Samuel Ambagula. I think I've said that wrong, but Ambagula. But yeah, he's 20 years old. He scored 1 goal, 3 assists this season. He's probably the only out-and-out left winger there. They've got a few right wingers that can play in the opposite position as well. But Chelsea, we've already spoke about, Raheem Sterling potentially making the move. Pedro Neto, Mudryk, when you look at the left wing. But at the same time, these are players that, except for maybe Pedro Neto, even with his injuries, we don't know if he's going to be playing consistently at Juventus. Samuel, he's a player that he's 20 years old, so is he going to be playing consistently week in, week out? So he's definitely going to have competition. I think where he still has potentially something to prove in the Premier League, in England as well, he's used to the football, but at the same time, we've seen what he's done on the European stage. So I think if I was advising Sancho, it would be difficult because I could see his strengths being really good for Juventus, but at the same time, I can see what he could add to Chelsea as well. So,
Agent
I've
Sam.
just sat on the bench there.
Yeah. I think it's really important how the club that he ends up at defines his role and sells his role, because Enzo Maresca seems to kind of want flying wingers. Sancho isn't quite that flying winger. He's able to get the ball to feet, turn in tight spaces and run, but again, electric pace isn't perhaps his game. And for Juventus, bringing in Gonzalez and Conceição in this window, Sancho would offer something slightly different to what they have there already for Thiago Motta. So I think it's about how those head coaches say, this is how I see your role, this is why you're different to what I have, and this is why I want you.
And Enzo's played with him before, in the youth ranks, so that might be something that would be exciting for Sancho. I've heard he's a Chelsea fan. It might not be true, these players, it changes depending on where they go as well. But I think that would be desirable for him being in London and an exciting project moving forward.
Right. Victor Osimhen, it does feel a little bit like decision day for him. Al Ahly have offered him a huge deal, €30 million a year. Chelsea, we know, interested in signing him too. I'm so interested to see how this plays out because Osimhen is linked every window, isn't he? Do you think there's more chance of him going to Saudi or Chelsea?
I think Saudi at the moment because the finances involved are just out of this world, aren't they? And we know from Chelsea's wage structure that they won't be able to compete with that. Sam's just said Chelsea are trying to keep the wages at a certain level, and Osimhen doesn't really fit into that. I think Chelsea will end up looking elsewhere in the next day or so. Well, next day because there's not.
No, also.
The only reason I think Chelsea have higher chances because I feel like if he was to go Saudi, it would have happened already. I know that obviously we know about the wages that they offer and
their deadline longer.
The deadline is longer, but at the same time, he would want the comfortability of going into a side and acclimatising to it as quick as possible. But also, his agent and himself have talked about what they want to achieve in Europe. And I think that's something that he wants to do at his age as well. So I think it seems like they're waiting for Chelsea to kind of budge in terms of what they're trying to offer him because we know he sees himself as one of the best strikers in the world and his numbers proves that. But I'm not sure. Again, fence sitting.
You mentioned that Chelsea looking at other targets for the striker position. Who else are they looking at?
Yeah, Chelsea and actually Al Ahly as well, because they're involved in the Osimhen game and also the Ivan Toney game, which Chelsea are involved in as well. He's someone, Ivan Toney, that is, that Chelsea have looked at as a potential alternative target. I think the issue there again is Brentford's valuation. The Saudi side made an offer that was well short of Brentford's valuation. But if there is an opportunity for that deal to get done at a price that Chelsea is a bit more amenable to Chelsea, and I think that's something they would consider. And then another name that cropped up again yesterday was John Duran. Chelsea spoke to Aston Villa earlier in this transfer window about taking him. That move didn't end up progressing, and one source told Sky Sports News yesterday that couldn't be ruled out, another move by Chelsea for John Duran at Villa.
OK.